5 steps to a better relationship. Another way to think of it is how to make the best of conflict in relationships. I thought this would be a great topic because we are in quarantine, so everybody is pretty much stuck 24/7 with their family, with their loved ones. And a lot of us aren't used to that. A lot of us have work or other ways that we blow off steam, and now we are seeing the truth, seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly of everything in our relationships. So what's at the foundation here to a good relationship? Well, it's communication, of course. So why are relationships so difficult? I mean, we all care, we love each other, so why isn't that enough? Well, emotions are just like a physical muscle that has to be exercised. We spend countless hours working on our education to empower our brain, but often we really don't learn that much about how our emotions work. And while fighting can often get a bad rap, fighting is not always a bad thing. It actually is just there as a signal, just like pain is. It's a signal to tell us something is wrong. So what are we going to do about that? We can ignore it and have it grow, or we can demolish the other person with our arguments and win. But in a relationship, you don't really get anywhere with that. So here are 5 steps. You can think of them as emotional markers that let you know where you're at in this path of emotion. So for the examples, I'm going to mostly use romantic relationships and conflict with those because that's the most common. But honestly, these 5 steps can be used for any relationship you have. A mother-daughter relationship, father-son relationship, even relationships that you have at work. So these 5 steps are not always done in order, although I'm going to explain it in order. And what's interesting and curious is that because we are all different people, some of us avoid one step and never want to go there. And some other people only stay in one step. But if you want to be a Jedi master of relationship communication, of understanding yourself and understanding others, then that's what I'm going to present here. So first off, and then this is not a step because that would be way too easy, but I would recommend that you watch this video and then whoever you are having a disagreement, they also watch this video because both people need to go through these 5 steps. Like they say, it takes 2 to tango. And one final caveat, some of the steps can be really, really tricky. So if it's too difficult to do it face-to-face, you can do it over the phone. You can do it over Zoom. You can write a letter. You can write it through text. So there's different ways of expressing each of these different steps. Okay, because this is emotion we're dealing with, this is not so much action of steps of action, but it's steps of perception. So our first step of perception is going to be the step of I am always right. This is the step of anger, blame, judgment, attack before you're attacked, dog eat dog, survival, complain, create a fortress, and see the world in black and white, because that's kind of how you have to always see the world if you think you are always right. This is a very myopic place, but it's also essential, because if you're the type of person who likes to avoid conflict at all costs, and you're missing this step, then you're going to miss a lot of what you're actually feeling. I had to take a break because my dog was snoring, so I had to let her out of the room. Okay, so this step might seem very myopic and pointless to some people, especially people that consider themselves to be very spiritually evolved. And anger is something that some people never want to head towards. And of course, the other 90% of the population, they love anger. It's like the go-to for most everybody. So if you're one of those people that considers yourself better than this stage, it might actually be easier to write out what you're angry about in a letter form or in text. But we're all human, and we all have anger, and we all have judgments. When people can't get past this step, both people are angry, and they're just fighting and there's conflict, then they decide, okay, we have to go to counseling, right? Couples counseling. Because see, if you stay in this stage, you might always win the battle, but you're always going to lose the war. Because unlike anything else, I guess, in life, if you're always winning, you're actually always losing in a relationship. Okay, step 2, reflection. This is a time to reflect on your own feelings, your own pain, vulnerabilities, insecurities, and self-doubt. In couples therapy, this would be the part where they tell you, instead of saying, you did this, say, I feel like sometimes you blah, blah, blah. Now, it's true that a lot of people like to stay in this stage because they like to see themselves as a victim. It might be easier for them. But if you spend too much time in this stage, you'll always destroy yourself. And if you don't spend enough time in this stage, then you will have no ability to self-reflect. In this stage, we realize that sometimes our fears are why we are making the decisions we're making, and not what we thought was guiding our decision making, like love or generosity. This is where instead of saying, you didn't call me back because you're cheating on me, you could say, I'm afraid that you not calling me back means you don't love me. This is a really hard stage to stay in for most people because who wants to be vulnerable? I mean, who truly wants to just expose their worst fears and their deepest flaws and all the things that make us feel like we're not good enough? But it takes emotional strength to explore our weaknesses. All right, step 3. If you've gotten to step 3, then you are at the step that every couples therapist really would feel like you're a success story if you get here. And I know I have 5 steps, so this isn't as easy as you thought it was going to be, right? So step 3, the internal philosopher and psychologist. This is where you think, I might actually have been wrong. Self-realization hits. Reflect on the situation, the big picture, not just your itty-bitty little part of what you were wanting to see. This step might actually need some time because it is about reflection. And so this could be a break, this could be taking a walk, this could be just stepping away from conflict for a while and digging deep internally. This is a time where we have to think things through, but it's not really our mind that's thinking through our thoughts as much as it is our mind thinking through our emotions. To be able to actually look at all of our emotions as if they're laid out like place cards and say, why am I feeling that? Now, what does that feeling have to do with this feeling? This is where we have to start seeing things as a puzzle, something to analyze. And for some people, they have this ability naturally. This is someone who's interested in psychology or behavior of others, always kind of wondering why people think what they think. But this step absolutely does not come easily to people that see the world in black and white, see the world that they are always right. You see, feelings aren't actually always right, and feelings aren't actually always mature. Sometimes feelings can lead us in the wrong direction if we're not able to see from this self-aware perspective. Now, of course, if people spend too much time here, then they might actually get out of touch with raw emotions, those raw internal gut emotions that they have. They might completely discredit or ignore. So maybe if it's someone who's always thinking and not feeling enough, this could be a place, a stage that they're always sort of living inside of because it feels safe for them. But if you don't spend enough time here, your judgment is definitely in question. You'll be probably throwing the baby out with the bathwater in relationships because you're unwilling to change, or you'll be staying in a relationship that is just not working and never will work, but you haven't come to this state of realization. Almost like trying to find water in an emotional well that's dried up. This is where we finally see clearly our boundaries, what they should be and why. This is what we see what is okay and what is not okay. What is abusive, what is fair, and what is not fair. This is the step where we know who we are and we know what we want. We ask questions like, why are you so important to me in my life? What do you represent? How come when you do this, you can trigger me so strongly? Why are the stakes always so high, emotionally speaking, when things involve you? And this is where the truth sets you free. This is where you're not going to give your power away, but you're not going to overpower either, because empowerment is not overpowerment. So, can there possibly be a step after step 3? Well, yes, there are 2 more steps. All right, step 4. This is the step of becoming the true listener. This is when I can explore you. What is your truth? This is where my level of compassion and empathy are at such a level that I can give you validation instead of just seeking my own validation. Now that I know my own truth, I'm wise enough and giving enough to be able to fully hear and feel and experience your truth. Now that I feel whole within myself, I want to explore other realities. Why am I so important to you? What do you need from me? What would you like our future to look like and feel like? This is the step where you actually have enough emotionally to give to your partner so that you're giving more than you're taking. This is where you have the ability to see what they see, to feel what they feel, and to step into their life. Now, if you do this step too much, then you might actually struggle with having an ego or a sense of self or a voice of your own or feeling like you even have a life of your own. But if you don't do this step enough, then you'll never really truly know what it is to be in a relationship. You'll never truly, fully merge with another person. A relationship is a love so strong that it helps you grow into another person, as if they are you. So your consciousness expands double, triple, and exponentially from the relationships that you have. And this is why when there are studies done about longevity of life and happiness in life, it always comes down to good relationships. Because when you get to this third and fourth and fifth step, it's life-changing. You're no longer alone. It's almost an out-of-body experience. Which leads us into step 5. After an out-of-body experience, how can there truly be another step? Well, step 5 is just simply, where do we go from here? Once both people have gone through all 4 of the steps, new possibilities open up. This is the step where true compromise and true teamwork can actually finally take place, which is what we've all been craving all along. Both people have stepped into a new reality, and now decisions can be made with a full understanding of each other's needs and boundaries, hopes and desires, so that this relationship can be at its fullest. All right, so those are the 5 steps. And to close out this video, I want to divide relationship conflict into 3 typical categories. It can be hard to decipher the 3, so just bear with me. Now, 2 of these types of conflict can usually be worked through with these 5 steps that I've given, and the final type often cannot. And so if you try these steps and you fail and you don't know why, that's why I'm leaving this final caveat here. So the first type of relationship conflict I would call would be pet peeves. This would be like you don't put the toilet seat down, you don't roll the toothpaste up the right way, or maybe I don't like the way that you put dishes in the dishwasher. Now, pet peeves are usually the most trivial, of course, of conflict, which if that's all you have as far as conflict, count yourself really lucky because you're actually with somebody who is extremely loving and giving. It's just good to remind yourself how lucky you are. It's good to remind yourself of why you were attracted to each other in the first place. And it's good to seek out a spirit of gratitude because often pet peeves are just really insecurities that are coming from within. Like, I feel fat, and so I'm going to obsess about you gaining 5 pounds. That sort of thing. Now, sometimes pet peeves are just a tip of the iceberg. And what I mean by that is that there's something deeply underlying and it's just too scary to go there. And so we use a pet peeve as sort of a distraction so that we're not actually looking at the real problem. So that's not what I would consider a true pet peeve, but maybe a mimicking pet peeve. Which leads us into the second type of relationship conflict, which are big unresolved conflicts. These are things that happen every year at the same time, at Christmas time. Or maybe it's a disagreement that suddenly flares up every 4 months. Then it seems to go away, like, oh, well, okay, it's gone. But it always comes back. And these are big unresolved differences between 2 people. And this is the perfect type of conflict that the 5 steps will help resolve. Those conflicts that maybe you've been in that same conflict for years, you've almost given up hope that there can ever be a resolution to it. But the third type. So if these 5 steps don't work for you and your partner, and you try everything, and you try it multiple times, and you try it for multiple months, and it still doesn't work, then it could be a type of conflict that I would call unresolved trauma. This can be from one or both people. But it often stems from childhood, could actually be past lives trauma. But it will give you the feeling as if whatever conflict you actually have or confrontation, there's a shadow boxing going on where they're fighting you, but they're not really fighting you. They're fighting someone else. So it feels almost very impersonal. And it could feel like it's all of a sudden, like you did nothing to instigate it, and then it just comes out of nowhere, which often is a sign that it's a trauma-related issue and that it's not actually about this relationship currently. It's about a past relationship. So maybe they had conflict with their father, and now that conflict keeps arising even though you are not their father. So this is definitely where I would say 90% of the time, the 5 steps that I have given are not going to work, because it's something that has to be dealt with even outside of this relationship. So some kind of personal therapy or healing has to take place in order for that person to fully be present with you in the relationship currently. And often there can be a lot of denial for the reason that a coping mechanism might have been that they locked the trauma away, so it's in their subconscious. They're not consciously aware, and they don't want to be aware. So they might be doing everything that they can to keep you or anyone away from seeing what the real problem is. So in those situations, they do say it takes 2 to tango, but I would say this is the exception to the rule here, because in those situations, they're not really fully in a relationship, and they can't be until they go through a lot of healing. And they can't go through a lot of healing until they step out of the denial phase. So I don't want to end the video on a negative note, but I did want to make sure to leave that there for you, because if you're trying these 5 steps and you feel like it's just not going anywhere, I do want to give you a jumping off point for why that could be. I know this is a hard time for everyone if you're watching this video during quarantine as I'm making this video. Stay emotionally strong and try to make the very best of this time that we have together as families. And I really do hope for love and positivity for all of your loved ones. And I hope everyone's safe and healthy out there, and that everyone's going to get back on their feet soon. All right, love and light to you guys, and take care.